Honey, are you sure you don't want breakfast?
I've got to go.
One year ago, 32-year-old Eva Glaver from Frankfurt spotted an abnormal lump in her breast. Soon her suspicion was to be confirmed. It was a malignant tumor.
First of all, the breast was amputated. Then I went into chemotherapy 6 times. I was getting irradiated for 6 weeks and I get antibodies 18 times. Hopefully it'll be over then and I don't ever have to go through that again. How did you tolerate the infusions today? Quite well so far. What did you say? There's a cystic alteration in your right breast? As well, yes. In the right breast, yes. And the tumor was on the left. Where exactly? Yes, here above. It would be very important that you know which deodorants you can use. I would pay attention to the contained additives and, most importantly, that there's no aluminium involved. Aluminium? Yes, exactly. I wouldn't take any risks.
Aluminium? A century ago, most people wouldn't have known what to make of that word. Today, this light metal is about to outperform iron. Aluminium is by far more than an average material. Its most varied compounds are used in cosmetics and also to purify water. Products made from aluminium have become a feature of our everyday life. Apparently, we are living in the age of aluminium. And Werner Jager is one of its prophets. He's the head of the Research and Development Department of Hydro Building Systems and Europe's largest aluminium company, Norsk Hydro.
Aluminium as such is a very charming and a very exciting material, because with this kind of properties, you have really all opportunities in hand. You can really make from the very beginning of an idea till the very end. We call it cradle to cradle. Everything possible with one material. The bandwidth, the application width of aluminium is fascinating. And this is why it makes me an aluminium man.
Achtung und Schuss.
Christopher Exley chairs the Institute for Bioinorganic Chemistry at the British Keele University. For nearly 30 years, he's been occupied with one subject: aluminium.
I live about 12 kilometers from the university, and so I have been cycling from my home to Keele for 19 years now. It's been a long journey, almost equivalent to, well, more than twice around the Earth in cycling to Keele so that I can come here and do my research on aluminium.
In the early 1980s, the defining environmental topic was acid rain. Water is usually free of aluminium. Christopher Exley discovered that the acid in the rainwater extracted tiny bits of aluminium from the soil, but it was enough to kill fish. Results revealed that the aluminium ions attacked the fish's gills and disturbed their functions. The fish suffocated.
When you see how aluminium impacts upon a small salmon, it's actually quite a devastating thing. You see the suffering. It was these sorts of observations which made me think about working on aluminium per se, not simply aluminium in fish, but understanding how aluminium impacts upon all living things, and of course, primarily humans.
Eva Glaver is back working full-time as a midwife after her breast cancer diagnosis.
For 7 years in a row, I've been living on call. I had to do my 10 hours of work every day, often also some 20 hours straight. Births come at night mostly, until the next morning and so on. As long as it takes, and then back to home visits. Accordingly, I would say I have been sweating a lot and been carrying deodorants in every pocket all the time. About 11 of them. Because I always carry one in my sports bag, of course, one in my midwife's bag, in my handbag, at home, at my boyfriend's place, and another one for variety, and one in the car for emergencies.
The oncologist Philippa Dabra does research on the causes of breast cancer. She examines why remarkably many tumours appear in the region next to the armpits.
Studies done in the 1930s and 40s showed that there was 30% of breast cancers in this region. Now we have nearly 60% in this region. So something's going on beyond the ordinary explanation of there being more tissue in that region. And of course another possible explanation is that this is the region where chemicals are being applied under the breast.
Dabra's first guess was the negative influence of so-called parabens, which are contained in various cosmetics.
Then I realised that within those cosmetics was aluminium used as an antiperspirant, and that was added at quite high levels. And so the exposure was an issue, and I wanted to know whether aluminium could get into the human breast.
She started a comparative study of women with and without breast cancer.
You can draw from non-pregnant women a very small amount of fluid from the nipple with a breast pump. This is called a nipple aspirate fluid. And if you take those samples from women with breast cancer and women without breast cancer, you can measure the content of things in those two samples. And we found higher levels of aluminium in the nipple aspirate fluids from women with breast cancer.
The International Aluminium Institute is based in the centre of London, and it lobbies for the aluminium industry. This is where we meet toxicologist Nicholas Priest, who surveyed the safety of aluminium on the industry's behalf.
If there's good evidence of toxicity, then I'd be the first person to turn around and say, don't use it. Okay? But I can't find any. There isn't any systematic evidence to show toxicity at sorts of levels which people are exposed to. And people don't put huge quantities of aluminium under their armpits.
Philippa Dabra examined the effect of such minimal doses of aluminium on the female breast cells. Over the course of 1 year, she observed whether the living cells alter in the presence of aluminium.
Indeed, when we take normal breast epithelial cells, they will form colonies in suspension culture, and they can form what you might call little tumours in suspension in the presence of aluminium. But in the absence of aluminium, of course, they don't do it because they're normal cells. So in that sense, the aluminium seems able to convert a normal cell into a cancer cell.
Dabra even found another effect. Adding aluminium increased the chances of migrating cancer cells and the forming of metastasis.
One thing, we also find that aluminium may be able to influence the way the breast cancer cells behave and maybe the way that they can move. And of course, if that's proven and substantiated by other laboratories, is a very serious issue, because obviously nobody dies of a lump in the breast. They die because the cells can move to other sites around the body.
I was always looking at chemotherapy as a friend. I was certain that it's a major poison and that I'm doing my body great harm with that. But I was always trying to tell myself, oh, come on, you can do it. The toughest things were the suspected metastases in the liver. Just envisioning the end of my life was just somehow...
Most of that just doesn't penetrate the skin. There's some issue that if you shaved under your arms and you damage the skin, that you could get more aluminium going in. But again, it's the levels which you could imagine being transferred to the body are so small compared with any levels which we think are toxic.
A good 2/3 of deodorants contain aluminium compounds as an active ingredient. Aluminium reacts with the skin cells and bonds them in a way that they can't sweat anymore. Aluminium is the most common metal in the Earth's crust, twice as common as iron. But pure aluminium as such does not exist. It is bound tightly with other elements and cannot be washed out by regular water.
The earth that we're standing on is made of primarily aluminium, silicon, and oxygen. So the earth's crust, which is that layer which surrounds the whole of the earth, is aluminium, silicon, and oxygen. So aluminium is ubiquitous. It is everywhere.
A slate quarry. On the inside, the rocks are tied together by aluminium ions. It's extremely difficult to extract the raw metal. Bauxite is the only ore that contains aluminium of a kind that makes extraction economically viable. Aluminium manager Werner Jager is on his way to Porto Trombetas in Brazil, where his company is involved in one of the largest bauxite mines in the world. Here, in the middle of the untouched rainforest and hundreds of miles from any city, a mining enclave with over 6,000 workers has emerged. Without the company's invitation, you're not even allowed to leave the airport. Bauxite mining in the rainforest is comparatively easy. The ore can be found just a few meters below the surface. You only have to get rid of the forest first.
Hey, good to see you. How is life? It's quite big excavation here. How long does it take to remove this area?
About 2 shifts, so in 48 hours it'll be done.
The mining area expands rapidly, especially since 3 shifts are operating around the clock. Previously, the mines were located around the workers' settlement. These days, you have to drive about an hour to get to the current mining region. Porto Trombetas is one of the most profitable bauxite mines in the world. 18 million tons of aluminium ore are extracted here every year. As much as 250 football fields of species-rich primary forest is being cut down annually.
To some extent, it's an issue to remove the rainforest and then to reforest afterwards again. But on the other hand, you get a high quality of bauxite, which is definitely much more value than you have low-grade bauxite in other opportunities.
While the mines are being reforested, the original variety of species might be lost forever. Almost daily, freighters full of bauxite depart from the port. A single ship carries 70,000 tons. That's more than 3,000 truckloads. It travels along the Amazon River towards the Atlantic Ocean, where the bauxite goes into the next stage of processing. The largest aluminium refinery is located in Barcarena, by the Rio Pará. The people here make a living based on fishing. At least, they're trying to live off fishing. The Rio Pará was the habitat and main food source of the local population for many centuries. But since bauxite has been processed in the area, everything has changed.
Sei porque a água mudou aí, a água tá muito diferente.
I don't know what's causing this. the water changed significantly. It's become very white and viscous. I think it scared away all the fish from this part of the beach. 20 years ago, we caught a lot and came home with canoes full of fish that we could sell, but that's not possible anymore.
This is my company. This is the biggest alumina plant in the world. We have a capacity to produce more than 6 million tons per year.
6 million tons
per year. 6 million tons per year.
Since 2011, the aluminium refinery in Barcarena belongs to Norsk Hydro, which is now counted among a handful of multinational companies that control the whole production, from bauxite ore to raw aluminium. Here, the aluminium-rich parts of bauxite are extracted via aggressive caustic soda. Subsequently, the liquid is cooled and then burned to 1300 degrees Celsius. White aluminium powder is the basic material of which raw aluminium and countless other products, such as cement or aluminium ceramics, are produced. The working conditions are extreme. Despite the tropical heat, every spot of skin has to be protected from the caustic lye. More than half of the bauxite becomes useless red mud that gets dumped. What happens to all the hazardous waste remains unclear.
One way to use the red mud is, for instance, that you use it for roadworks. Also realized has been to make bricks or tiles out of it. We have also built houses out of this red mud bricks. We have tried this.
However, sufficient building material is available. The red mud dumping site is twice as big as the refinery itself. During an accident in a Hungarian aluminium factory in 2010, red mud broke loose. One of the biggest environmental disasters in Europe resulted. On the site of the aluminium factory in Oika, the dam of a red mud basin broke. A flood wave of several meters moved towards the small town of Devicsa. Hardly anyone in the area was aware that the red liquid wasn't water, but corrosive caustic soda. Istvan Benko from the local TV station quickly grabbed his camera when the disaster struck. The street had turned into a raging river. Benko managed to save himself by climbing onto the terrace of his house. Once he reached the bath, he realized that it was not average mud out there. His socks had dissolved in the liquid. One neighbor tripped and fell headfirst into the red mud. The firefighters took both of them to the hospital.
Every day when the bandages were changed, my skin was punctuated. At first I could feel it, but by day 4 my skin went dead. The lye worked so well that it attacked even the flesh underneath.
Around 1 million cubic meters of the highly toxic liquid was spread over the country. 10 people died in the flood. More than 100 had to be taken to the hospital with severe chemical burns. 1 year later, the area where Istvan Benko's house stood has been completely razed.
I wasn't present when the house was taken down. It would have been unbearably sad for me watching my life's work be destroyed in half an hour.
Benko's health has also been destroyed by the disaster. His body is covered in scars, and he can't even carry a camera anymore. The aluminium factory has resumed its production in the meantime. At the University of Vienna, a team of scientists does research on the cause of allergies. In order to test new therapies, they need someone who's ill. It's been known for quite some time that injecting bodies with aluminium hydroxide can trigger any kind of allergy, in animals, for instance. It now turns out that you can make mice allergic if you feed them apples or nuts, together with medications for heartburn. These drugs contain aluminium hydroxide as an active substance. And apparently, aluminium turns the immune system against a simultaneously administered substance.
By now we have picked out the major food allergens and could prove that with aluminium as an adjuvant, food allergies can develop. If you want, we could actually take the entire kitchen and add adjuvants, and from my current perspective, we could take anything here, with varying intensity, but we could induce food allergies, certainly.
I often have a runny nose and my tongue tingles sometimes too.
Studies show that children are more likely to suffer from allergies if their mothers were taking medication containing aluminium during pregnancy.
This is a very sensitive topic. Heartburn occurs because of the high position of the diaphragm during pregnancy. These days, highly potential medications are prescribed, which pregnant women take over a long period. And hence, not only their own immune system is getting influenced, but also the immune skills of their offspring towards allergies.
Some of these medications are available over the counter in pharmacies. Some time ago, the same substance already caused a worldwide scandal in dialysis stations. Herwig Holzer from Graz University was involved in detecting the case.
In the 70s, we observed very dramatic neurological inadequate cases. They suffered severe neurological deficits, speech and movement disorders. Surprisingly, young people in particular showed stroke-like, Alzheimer's-like symptoms.
Finally, Holzer and his colleagues found the cause. The new medications contained large amounts of aluminium hydroxide.
We discontinued with aluminium hydroxide as soon as we figured out the problem. But the neurological deficits did not improve. The problem was that the aluminium had already entered the brain, and the toxic effects expanded in a way that we could not see any remissions.
Over the past few years, Günter Perol has experienced an increase in unexplainable blackouts. At first, his wife Graziella thought it was some kind of burnout or depression. Eventually, he had to quit his job.
No, not those. Those were the caps we had to cut off earlier.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, let's throw them out again.
It started when I was driving in my car. No, on my bike. And I drove straight down the pavement. I noticed that I was driving falsely somehow. It wasn't correct, the way I was driving. Or another time when I was driving my car, I eventually crossed the pavement and something wasn't right.
Ultimately, his neurologist wanted to clarify any suspicion and invited Günter Perol for a clock drawing test. A standard test for diagnosing Alzheimer's disease. You see the blank circle? Please fill it in. Turn the circle into a clock.
In a circle? Then I have to draw something on here?
The 12. Let's start with that. It's always the easiest. Where's the 12? I'm sure you remember somehow where it stood.
On top.
Yeah. And then the other numbers?
6, 7, 8, 9.
Now it has to show us a time. It says 10 past 11.
10 past 11 now? 10 past 11, maybe like this? No, that's not right. Doesn't work.
No?
No, that's not right. 10 past 11 has to be here.
You know, the clock always has two hands, a big hand and a little hand, and they point at 10 past 11.
But how? Here? In this? 11 should. No, that is 11. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, fine. Let's put it to one side.
Now it is really pretty serious. When we came back from our vacation in the first few days, he couldn't get along in his own apartment anymore. He stood in the hall and said, "Where do I go now? How do I get to the bedroom? How do I get to the bathroom?"
Günther Perol was always rather skeptical when it came to medication, except for his heartburn pills.
We have known each other for 28 years, and ever since then my husband has been taking these drugs. Maybe even longer, before we even met.
Yeah, looking back, I don't even remember it.
In any case, longer than 25, 28 years.
Well, I'm really wondering.
So what does it say here? Long-term use of high doses. Look at that. May lead to aluminium deposits in nerve and bone tissue. This may lead to brain damages. Look, in brackets it even says dementia and anemia. Oh, Lord. In the case of renal insufficiency and long-term use, the aluminium level should be checked regularly. Yeah, but who checks their aluminium level?
We never did that.
No.
Ever.
A spokesman for the European Medicines Agency doesn't see any reason to take action.
Actually, on the very top of the information for use, it says this compound should not be used over a longer period of time. If taken for a longer time, a doctor should be consulted. Thus, a long-term use without medical attendance is actually almost impossible. And one must not forget there's also the pharmacist who hands out these compounds and has the duty to inform the patient and must give advice on the potential risks.
We were never informed about that, not even by the best pharmacy.
Yes, that's true.
We were never made aware of that.
A couple of days ago, I found another article in a magazine which dealt with the suggestion if there was a new medication to be developed in the near future. Maybe it's already too late for me. That might as well be the case. I might as well say goodbye now. That's what I'm saying. Of course, it would be nice to stay here a little longer. Yeah, okay.
Aluminium is the only abundant element on Earth that has no use for any biological function of any animate being. That is extremely unusual from an evolutional point of view, because one of nature's principles is to use everything available in a positive sense.
We have not managed to identify one single benefit of aluminium in terms of promoting any biological system. Clearly, it's a huge benefit to mankind as in material science and the many ways in which we use aluminium in the aluminium age. But does it benefit any biochemical system? And we're not just talking about humans. We're talking about from the smallest bacterium right through to humans. We have no evidence that any organism actively uses aluminium for any beneficial purpose.
The aluminium powder from Brazil has arrived in Germany, at the industrial harbour Neuss, Düsseldorf. Here it will enter the last stage of the production process. It takes an enormous amount of electrical energy to extract the metal from its combination with oxygen.
An electrolysis cell you can imagine like a bathtub. At the bottom of the bathtub you will find plates for the cathode which are made out of carbon. And due to putting a lot of current inside this process, you extract aluminium, which is then going as liquid metal at the bottom of the bathtub. When you compare us with steel, we take roughly 10 times more energy than 1 kilogram of steel.
With the amount of energy consumed by the aluminium plant each year, one could easily supply a year's demand of electrical power for a city like Düsseldorf. And this energy is bound in the raw metal. In recycling aluminium, the malus becomes a bonus. Now it only takes half as much energy as would be necessary to melt down scrap iron.
Aluminium is a very precious metal. When you go for recycling, every kilogram you can bring back to your dealer brings you very, very much profit and value. And this makes aluminium so good. Properties excellent, and you have a very precious material where you get a lot of money when you bring it into recycling loop.
The value of the original material increases fivefold with each processing step, from bauxite to oxide powder to the final metal bar that any form of metal plate can be made of. The problematic phase of production, however, is increasingly outsourced to developing countries. Drinking water is being purified with aluminium in large parts of Europe. As in the case of the waterworks in Camelford in 1988, this process can also go wrong sometimes.
I used to come here every morning to get my morning papers, and I walked along the river here, and the whole of the riverbed was coated in dead fish, and I wondered what on earth had happened. But in the evening, my wife took a bath. And when she washed her hair and mixed the soap with the water, it went bright blue. And she was quite surprised and not alarmed by this. She just it was surprise.
At the waterworks, a minor technical problem was reported.
The water is perfectly safe even for drinking, although the palatability of it means that people won't be drinking it. It is safe for all general purposes, although I will stress that 1 or 2 people will find it a skin irritant.
Finally, Doug Cross was able to make the connection between the dead fish and the strange taste of the drinking water.
When I came down in the morning, there were dead fish here, but not upstream. So the pollution could not have come down the river like this. It started here. And then someone said they were emptying the water mains onto the road during the night, flushing them into the river on the other side of the bridge. And that is what killed the fish. In other words, our drinking water was poisonous.
Eventually, the waterwork authorities had to admit what had actually happened. A newly employed truck driver, left alone at the waterworks, simply filled his load of aluminium sulfate into the wrong tank. The contaminated drinking water was promptly pumped into the district lines. All around, strange incidents started to occur. Carol, Doug Cross's wife, was also affected.
And then my wife began to complain of the arthritis getting very bad. Her sort of illness was relatively mild at the time. Many people were far worse. People told me they had been driving their cars and they had bad memories, and they would stop suddenly in the side of the road and think, where was I going? And why am I on this side of the road? I'm on the wrong side of the road. Things like this became common. Then I started getting phone calls from farmers. One farmer says, I had 40 lambs in a field with a water pipe from the tank, from the town. And another field, next field, I had 200 more with a natural spring. And all those in the natural spring field were fine. But 10 out of the 40 with drinking tap water died. And then people told me about the similar problems with cows. When you hear of animals dying, big animals, and then somebody says, oh, well, it doesn't affect humans, you know that they're lying.
In 2003, 15 years after the incident, Doug Cross noticed worrying alterations in his wife Carol's behaviour.
She became extremely weak, and gradually she lost everything. And then on one occasion she looked at me and said quietly, "Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye." And that's the last time she spoke to me.
Soon afterwards, Doug Cross's wife died at the age of 59. The coroner requested Christopher Exley to make an examination of Carol Cross's brain and check the concentration of aluminium.
There is no normal level. Normal level would be no aluminium. The reality is that we all have aluminium in our brain. Something like 1 or 2 micrograms of aluminium per gram of tissue dry weight. What we have found, for example, in certain cases of Alzheimer's disease, is that this figure might be as high as 4, 5, or 6. In one of the samples from Mrs. Cross's brain, we found 23 micrograms per gram dry weight, which is almost unheard of. One of the highest levels that we have ever measured, and we have probably measured more brains and aluminium contents of human brains than probably any other group in the world.
Nice to meet you, Phil.
The Citizens' Initiative of Camelford still gathers today. Carol Cross's fate is no single case.
Bridget struggled a lot with her last 18 months. She struggled and struggled and struggled.
She was 61, I believe.
He began to suffer with his memory towards the end.
Yeah.
And he also developed epilepsy.
There was no blood flowing through many parts of Bridget's brain.
Wow.
It was dead.
There was an incident in the UK about 20 years ago at Camelford. Afterwards, there were lots of people that could demonstrate that they had cognitive impairment, okay, because they had a vested interest, okay? If they were cognitively impaired, they might get some compensation. If there was no damage, they wouldn't get any compensation. And that's one of the problems you get.
In many regions of Europe, as in Britain, aluminium is used to purify drinking water. Aluminium does what it's best at. It connects with the next best molecule, in this case, with the dirt particles in the water. They become heavier and get stuck in the filter or the infiltration basin.
We can also use the polyaluminium chloride to run a flocculation system in our waterworks, where these particles are bound again, and then it becomes the so-called drinking water. Then it is definitely clean.
Dentist Gerhard Breuer from Berlin was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 3 years ago. Simple, everyday tasks become a real challenge for him, and also for his partner Birgit.
Now, what should we cook on the weekend? I just checked. We still have some pesto left.
Yeah?
Should we add a salad as a side dish and just cook some noodles?
Yeah, for a start. And then?
For tomorrow, lamb fillets.
Do you know if they have them?
Yes. Do you think you can do it? I'll write it down for you.
I'll find the store.
You'll find the store, but will you find the lamb fillets?
Yes, however, if they have them.
And for Lola, we need sausages. Come back safe.
We'll see. Okay, where are the sausages? I can't find the sausages. Where did I put my cart? Anybody know where my cart is?
We do not know whether aluminium is a contributory factor or indeed a cause of Alzheimer's disease, but it doesn't change anything about the fact that aluminium is a neurotoxin. It doesn't change anything about the fact that aluminium is associated with the main pathological features of Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't change the fact that if you live in certain areas with a certain amount of aluminium in your water supply, you'll have a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease in those areas.
Dentists frequently deal with aluminium alloys. Dental technicians' health problems have already been examined in connection with aluminium. 3 years ago, Gerhard Breuer had to shut down his practice. Since then, many things have become strange to him.
I don't know this. I don't know how that works. Drills are those you can and should treat teeth with. Such tools you use to improve your sight around the corner and so on. And then you also have to use such sensors to look with your fingers if everything is all right. You just don't know what came out of it. It's pretty hard now to look at what's in my brain or so. You could check it out, but then you shouldn't do it because then you might as well be dead.
I'm absolutely confident that the disease Alzheimer's would exist in the absence of aluminium. But would it occur so young in people? In other words, perhaps you'd have to live to 150 in the absence of aluminium. Or would it be as aggressive? Perhaps it would be much less aggressive and it wouldn't be so debilitating, and some people's lives would not be so poor in the period from when they're diagnosed up until when they die.
To a large extent, people now think, oh, well, it's a dead issue. Aluminium is not really a health problem.
Even if industry-related professors keep vouching for its safety, the opposite view consolidates in scientific practice. For example, when Romain Gerardi, director of the Department of Neuromuscular Diseases at the Université Paris-Est, was confronted with a new kind of disease phenomenon among a growing group of people. Farmer Luc Braconnier is a typical case. He suffers from constant fatigue and severe muscular pain, so that he can hardly do his job anymore. The doctor takes a tissue sample of the muscle. The results seem mysterious at first.
We made electron microscopy. We found inclusions of unknown nature in the macrophages. We first believed that it was calcium, but calcium staining remained negative. And finally, we sent a sample to biophysics departments, and they only said to us, it appears to be aluminium. We do not know why it is an aluminium, but it is aluminium.
The muscle shows suspiciously infected areas where plenty of killer cells of the immune system have gathered. These so-called macrophages are filled up with aluminium particles. Aluminium is added to vaccines to increase their efficiency. Experts regard these additives as a dirty little secret, because nobody knows exactly how aluminium raises the effectiveness and what aluminium does to the body subsequently.
Everybody thought it was eliminated promptly after injection in the urine. Now we know it is not the case. The body can retain for more than 15 years the aluminium in the body, and nobody knows exactly what is the fate of this aluminium in the body. Will it be eliminated by the urine one day? Even this is not clear.
Gerardi and his team found out that in most humans or animals, the aluminium is broken down. But for a small percentage, these metal ions remain in the body for years.
A part of particles escape from the injected muscle and disseminate throughout the body and can enter to distant sites after circulation for months and months in the blood circulation and penetrate progressively in distal organs such as spleen, but also liver, and at the end, very lately and very slowly, into the brain.
In May 2012, experts meet at a World Congress for Autoimmune Diseases held in Granada, Spain. For the first time, aluminium is at the center of attention.
This is the biggest autoimmunity meeting ever. It has 2,300 participants. And we have 2 or 3 sessions dedicated to the issue of adjuvants.
It's a combination of magnesium carbonate and aluminium hydroxide.
Can cause autoimmune phenomena or autoimmune diseases.
But there's very little doubt that aluminum is a neurotoxin. And it does quite a range of things, impairment of memory, cognition, and psychomotor control.
Understanding the way aluminium works is the answer to understanding its effectiveness.
Inert mineral particles can enter the brain using a Trojan horse mechanism. This is very important. Particles of aluminium can penetrate the brain as a cool particle.
To many of those attending these sessions, it was a novel information. Our role as organizers of this meeting is to spread information, because little knowledge is dangerous. We do not condemn vaccine. We do not want to abolish vaccine. But I wish and I pray that I would know who is susceptible and who is not, to avoid the use of aluminium.
Producers of vaccines will have to invest in the development of aluminium-free alternatives, says one consensus of the conference. But the authorities see no reason to take action.
I don't think it's a medical authority's task to exert pressure. From our point of view, there's no imminent danger from aluminium hydroxide currently. So how should we exert pressure?
Back in Frankfurt, Eva has invited friends to a party. It's been a year since she finished the chemotherapy.
I wanted to say one more thing real quick, and that is, thank you all very much. Not only for showing up here today, but most of all, for your company over the last year, which somehow had more downs rather than ups on most days. Thanks for simply sticking around, and here's to you.
Pandora's box has been opened. Aluminium has been let out. So how is this going to impact on future life on Earth? Well, the first indications are not great, and we need to try to solve that problem. We need to learn how to live in the aluminium age, which is not going to go away in the near future, without the consequences or possible consequences of this increasing body burden of aluminium, the increasing incidence of possible aluminium-related disease.